Howdy, Agency Overdrive members. Hope you're well. I have been excited to produce this lecture for a while. It's, I think, going to be one of the most valuable lectures in the Agency Overdrive. I think it's going to be a super valuable template for you to have in your business. I'm not on video because we're going to be going over slides, but also we're going to go over the actual model over here. So I figured that the video just might mess up if you're trying to see something in a cell. So we'll just do it by audio. We'll go through the slides. So this is an advanced budget allocation model. Clients come to you, or you're in digital advertising and you have a marketing budget to work with. But where do you spend it? It's a tough question to answer. And having a budget allocation model allows you to begin answering that question. How should you spend your marketing budget? And this could be determining SEO versus paid advertising. It could be determining paid advertising, but what channels do you spend on? Facebook, Google, Facebook brand advertising, Facebook performance advertising, Google search, display, Instagram, Spotify, streaming TV. How do I allocate the budget? So why do we have a model? Because clients expect their agency to provide insight into multi-channel budget allocation. Your clients are going to expect this of you. And whether you're a freelancer or you're working at an agency or you're in-house, being able to present something like this is going to immediately communicate that you're a next level asset. Because how is a budget allocation usually done? Well, one, it's not done. Oftentimes, and I've seen this a lot, that the client comes and says, well, we want to spend $30,000 on Facebook and $15,000 on Google. And that's you not doing a budget allocation. That's just it's being told to you how budget should be allocated. Or if the client asks you, you sort of just don't actually do a sophisticated allocation, or you guess, or you keep it the status quo. You look at the historic data that the client has. Where have they allocated budget in the last 6 months? And you just keep that. Or you go with the client wants, like I mentioned, or you go with your own experience and comfort zone. And this is how we did it for a while, where we said, we're really good at managing Google Ads. It's what we do. So we'll just try to spend as much as we can because that's how we make money. And then we added Facebook ads. But really the best way to do it is for you to develop the consultative skills that even if you're not managing streaming TV, even if you're not managing SEO, even if you're not managing display, let's say, you're able to at least show the client how budget should be allocated by doing something statistically significant and sophisticated as this is going to do. So this model that you're gonna have access to, that we're gonna go into shortly, it's fundamentally different. We start off by asking, where is your maximum opportunity? And then we work backwards from there. What channels present to you the most potential revenue opportunity out of your entire target market? So in the example of the template, we're going to be looking at the US. We're going to assume the USA is your entire target market, and we're going to narrow it from there to what is your addressable market, but where are you going to make the most money? That's what we ask first. And then based on impression, how many impressions we might get on a channel, what is that click-through rate going to be, what is our CPC going to be, then we start looking at where do we actually allocate budget across each channel. So this model incorporates market size, addressable market audiences. We're going to get into this. It's very interesting. Primary market targets and secondary market targets. Market audiences, target audiences, you can call it what you want. X factor adjustments. We're going to talk about the X factor adjustments and more. So the best way to approach budget allocation is to first determine opportunity. It's very unbiased. It's very objective. Where are you going to have the greatest opportunity to succeed? What channels will bring you the most money? And of course, no budget allocation model is perfect because you're looking into the future. You're using assumptions, but that's okay. It's okay to use assumptions. The point is that you're using assumptions in a very organized, intelligent, and sophisticated way. So we look for the biggest opportunity, and then we work backwards from there. A lot of people are probably thinking, is this model for any budget? 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, a million? Yes, this works for every budget. So let's begin, okay? So the first thing we're going to do in the model is we're going to enter our total marketing budget. This could be weekly, annually, monthly. I did this annually. I like to look at a budget allocation annually, and then you could always divide by 12 to get your monthly budget. It's very easy. You could adjust for seasonality, so on and so forth. But this is the best way to look at this as is doing it annually. So as we go through this, here I am in the actual model. I'm going to zoom in. As we go through this, you should imagine your client scenario, your case being applied here. Okay, so we actually got a new client recently that we're working on. They are a marketplace that connects people who want to buy food to home chefs. So imagine an Uber Eats style business. It's an app. You put in an address, but instead of ordering food from a restaurant, you're ordering food from a home cook. That's the company. It's very simple. They make money. They take a cut of the transaction. So I'm going to pretend that that's who we're dealing with now. This budget model was initially built for a pharma company, but it doesn't matter because this could work for any business. So total marketing budget over here. So I have $250,000 in here. This could change. Anything in blue is changeable. Anything in black is the output of a formula, and you should not change it. So 250,000. So if you put in 100,000, you'll see the charts down here will update. If I change this to 20,000, it'll still work, right? Everything updates. If I make this 2 million, it's going to work. Okay. So let's just go back to 200,000 and we'll take it from there. So let's say that's an annual budget. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to do after you've put in your total marketing budget down here is to understand channel breakdown. So there's two things. Column B is what I call your type or your medium or your category. The column D has your actual channel. This is good. Breaking down this way allows us to do more advanced reporting, charts, analysis. So this model allows for 3 total mediums and 7 individual channels. And you could build on this easily. You just, if you're relatively savvy with Excel and Google Sheets, you could certainly build on this. So I have 3 categories. Let's go into the actual model and take a look. Zoom in a drop. So here in column B, I call brand advertising. So this would be upper funnel. TV oftentimes is different. There's like a mix. Since you're buying it by publisher, it depends if you're buying it programmatically. It could be, oftentimes clients will consider streaming TV or cable TV advertising a separate medium altogether. And then I have performance. So performance might be bottom of the funnel, remarketing on Facebook, bottom of the funnel search. So over here, I include Facebook performance and Google performance. And under brand, I have more middle funnel, top of funnel awareness campaigns, video. So display, YouTube, Facebook brand, and Google brand. And then you'll see over here in row 13 is the brand average. And this is going to be important because clients will want to say, well, how much are we spending on brand overall, right? So you could break this down in different ways. You might say the category up here is Google, and you might do Google New York, Google LA, Google. You could break it down into different ways. If the market conditions for your product change drastically, and that could be considered a channel. You might make this all one, right? You could make all of these. Just don't fill in number 13 because it's pulling an average. So you might make this all one channel, one type. You might do something like PPC, SEO, and content. So all this stuff could work. I'm in the paid advertising business. Most of you are in the paid advertising business. So this is a typical breakdown, how I would look at things. And even if I'm not going to be managing the streaming TV, although we actually have started doing some streaming TV for clients, but even if I wasn't going to manage the streaming TV, I want to be able to show my clients that I could predict and incorporate streaming TV into my budget allocation model. So that's a big thing. Now, once you get a sense of how this might be broken out for you and understand, build that in. This is just type it in. So this, display, you could change it to SEO if you wanted to. And we're just going to keep it how I have it. Next, moving along. removing channels, right? So the first question you might have is, let's say I want to build a model with 4 and not 5, or 4 and not 7, or 3 channels and not 7. So it's very easy. All you need to do is make sure your X, we're going to talk about the X factor in a moment, but just this is just for your sake. Go to column Q and make sure it is the negative of whatever is in column P. Okay, so I'll show you how to do that. So let's say I want to have no spend on Facebook brand, for example. So I'm going to go to column Q. Okay, so over here I have, it's blue. It's just written 1500. We'll get to X factor in a second. I'm just going to go equals, open parentheses, negative, column P, close parentheses, hit enter. And now in my chart, $0 for Facebook brand. Okay, $0 for either of the market segments, $0 total. And if I just remove that, if I undo that, we're back. Okay, so that's how you remove channels. Very straightforward. Understanding annual sales per customer. Now, this is very important because here's how we start understanding opportunity. This could be monthly, again, it could be annually. I like doing it annually. Now, your revenue per customer might change, or it might be predicted to be different based on different advertising channels. Upper funnel channels are typically less valuable. So this model allows you to customize the revenue per customer and the frequency of sales annually for every different channel we're looking at. And then we get an annual sales per person simply by multiplying those two numbers together. So let's see how this might change in the real world. Right, so let's take, I want to zoom out a little bit so you can get it, you can see the charts updating. So here we have these charts down here, right? But let's just say, let's watch for a second. If I take Facebook brand and I give it $100 average revenue per customer, my Facebook brand total spend goes up. Now, other things go up as well because there are other adjustments in this model that impact that. But let's just say, you see that difference. And if you look at streaming TV with a high with a high average revenue per customer of $22, and Facebook performance with the same high $22 average revenue per customer, and you come over here to the annual sales per person at $88 for Facebook performance and $66 for streaming TV, and you wonder, well, why are we allocating more to streaming TV? Okay, that's because there's other adjustments further here that would allow us to change that, and we're going to get to that in a moment. So anyhow, let's go back to average revenue per customer. So how much money do you make on average per customer? Now, it's possible, I would say Google performance, this might be, going back to our case, we might be $36 because, and we get more, maybe we have six sales, and you see everything is going to shift now towards Google performance. You see that down here in the chart. And over here, Facebook performance might be a little bit less at $29. Streaming TV might be $8. And again, this is an average. This column over here, row 13, is always going to be an average, so we leave that alone. And let's say over here we can keep this the same, we can move it around, but the point is you get the picture. You enter in your average revenue per sale for every individual channel. And now you have your annual sales per person, right? So you have one second, this has to be an average. Okay, so now we have our annual sales per person per channel. So we see clearly here, in this case, Google performance is estimated to have the highest revenue per customer and the most amount of most frequent sales per year. We're estimating, or we're using our historic data. If you're wondering how do we get this information, you go to your historic data. Look, do you have historic data? If you have historic data on these channels, then use it. If not, they're going to have to be guesses and estimations. But that's the point of a model. It's a model. So this shows me I'm predicting $216 in annual sales per person coming from Google Performance, $116 of revenue per year per customer coming from Facebook Performance. And of course, moving these numbers around is going to change that. So if my average order value is $18, it's going to change all the equations. And this is $17, things are going to change. Okay? Now, let's talk about addressable persona for a moment. Addressable persona is just like a notepad. This is for your notes. It's for sharing with the client who is the persona you were targeting on that channel. They might vary, it might not. So if I'm looking at streaming TV, I might say late night binge watcher, hungry, lives in apartment, single. So maybe that's my persona of who I'm targeting for the streaming TV customer for my company. So you could use this persona or not. It's up to you. It's just there as a nice thing. Now let's take a look at how we calculate the total addressable market. And understanding that getting a sense of the total addressable market is crucial in understanding where the most opportunity lies. Okay, so let's see if we come back and look at how this is all set up. So we begin with USA population. That's a great way to start. If you're targeting the US, if you're in a different country, use that country's population. If your client targets the whole world's population, sure. If that's the pool, you could do this internationally. But again, it's almost irrelevant. It's not irrelevant because we're going to significantly get down from that number. But if you're a good rule of thumb is you could use the country that such a campaign will be running in. Now, the impacted market is where you're important. What percent of total market is impacted by the problem you solve? So example, like your impacted market for your company, if you're an online sports book, might be all sports fans. If you're selling something for to women, beauty products, it might be all women over the age of 45. It might be all teachers, all parents. And then you figure that out as a percentage of the USA population. And it's usually very easy to pull these statistics from Statista or anywhere else online. So that's your impacted market. Finally, what percent of your impacted market is likely unable to purchase, whether it's an income problem, location, where you service. So the point here is it's getting a little bit more sophisticated because your impacted market or your total viable market is not really an addressable market for you. Because if you're selling a product that potentially could be purchased by any parent, there are going to be parents that cannot afford your product. There are going to be parents who just don't want your product. So that gives us a nice additional way to temper the model. So you could also feel free to override addressable market with your own known values. So if you're just advertising in Brooklyn, or you're advertising in a specific state, or you're advertising in a zip code and you happen to know how many people are in that zip code, then you can go into the addressable market column and override it. Let me just get this back here. That would be a fine thing to do. You could override the addressable market. It is a formula, but you could put in whatever you want. So again over here, if maybe this number is a little bit lower, maybe it's the same, right? So if I do a 1%, maybe maybe like 20% of people might be knocked out if this is more of a mobile thing. Maybe it's 80%. If it's 80%, my numbers are going to drop. Okay, and that's going to impact a lot of other things in the model. So let's go back to something. Maybe I have a 40% likelihood to purchase within my market. And again, this could change. Maybe for streaming TV, it's a little higher if it's harder to target. Maybe, and usually your impacted market is going to be the same across every channel. It's hard to imagine why your total, again, if you happen to know of a certain channel, what you're doing reaches more or less people than the next channel, you could incorporate that here into your impacted market. But again, if you know that, like the way you would look at this is if you're targeting all parents and you do some research and it comes out that 4% around of the US population are parents, then that's what you do here, 4%. Okay? Now again, you don't need to be super um, worried or careful about this portion of the model, because this is just going to get you a theoretical number. We're doing all this to get first your total addressable market per channel, it looks around here, 7.9 million. On average, we have 7.75 million. That's my total addressable market. But it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter in the context of my $200,000 ad budget for the entire year. But what's cool is this is going to start helping us allocate the budget across the channels. So we've gotten the total addressable market for a channel. That's the maximum amount. This is the maximum amount of people. Remember, this is a volume of customers, not a volume of sales. This is the total amount of people we think we could reach with each channel in a perfect world, if the inventory was available, right? It's very possible that we cannot even reach the 8 million people on Facebook or on display. It's, again, we're not making a statement as to whether or not we can actually reach those people. We're just trying to get first a sense of what is the total theoretical addressable market, because that's going to give us column M, and this is important, total potential sales in the entire market. So if we come back here and we look at total potential sales, we could do that by simply multiplying the total addressable market with total revenue per customer. That's what you get. You get the total potential US or other, depending on what your total population is, for each advertising channel. This, of course, does not consider your budget or available inventory. This is also, it seems silly, because it assumes you capture 100% of available customers, which of course you're not going to do. But we're using this figure to understand and model optimal budget allocation. So let's jump back to the model for a second. Here we are. So again, we have the total addressable market for every individual channel. Now, what's interesting to look at is the percentage of sales per category. So now, once we have so this shows me that for Google Performance, I could generate $855 million if I capture the entire market based on my model, which is 49% of the totals. So performance, Facebook is 31% of the total revenue. Google Performance is 49%, and the average of the brand channel, which is these four here, is going to be 11% of the total, right? Because we're looking, this formula, it sums all of the revenue together. Okay, so now we're going to look at, and of course, if we add all these four together, it's 100%. So we have 11% of the maximum amount of sales total comes from the brand advertising projections. 9% comes from streaming TV. 31% of the total addressable market in revenue comes from Facebook Performance, and 49% of the total addressable revenue comes from Google Performance. This is important to know, because now we're going to start allocating spend by category in line with our actual budget. And that's what we're going to do over here. Let's just go back to the slides for a moment. Okay. So we did this. We went through. Now we know the maximum opportunity. We get the percentage of total sales by medium type, and then get the individual spend by category using the percentage of the total budget for each client. That gives us our base spend per category. So again, this is the same slide. If you go back to the model, base spend per category simply takes 11% and asks what is 11% of our total budget, which is in cell F18, and that's where we have $200,000 right here. And remember, watch this. So if I go back to this spend by category, if I get a sum, that's going to be $200,000. And that's, again, remember, it's based on these percentages, and it's based on the total. Look at this. This is a $1.7 billion in total potential market. But I only have a budget of $200,000. But maybe I have a budget of $100,000, or maybe I have a budget of 90,000. Okay, now I come back here and my spend by channel in base case is 90,000. Okay, it works. So this model is going to work based on your budget, but it's looking at saying how do we allocate it based on where your maximum opportunity lies, right? It's very cool stuff. So let's just go back to 200,000. Here, column O. So we have our spend by category. So brand, overall brand. Remember, brand over here, it includes 1, 2, 3, 4 channels. It includes Google and Facebook brand advertising. It includes YouTube and display. And again, this could change. So that's going to be a total of $22,599 of my 200 grand in optimal settings to maximize opportunity. 9% is going to go to streaming TV, $18,102. 31%, $61,547 is going to go to Facebook performance. $97,000, $751 is going to go to Google performance, $200,000. And here, column P, our base case scenario is simply dividing by 4 this total brand number and allocating it to each Facebook brand, YouTube display, Google brand. Now, however, this is not perfect, because what if we don't want to just have a equal allocation across all these 4 individual channels under the brand category? And what if even further, there are market conditions that tell us we want to spend more on performance Google, more on performance Facebook? We have outside information. Well, that's where we enter the X factor. So we looked at this, we looked at base spend by channel, and the X factor. Here we are. After we've established the spend by category, we could use this variable called the X factor to add or subtract from the allocated budget based on notable factors impacting the digital marketing strategy. For example, what might some of these factors include? Let's say you're targeting a specific demographic, which is going to be on your streaming TV publishers, or you have an emerging trend where competitors are increasing brand awareness for bottom of the funnel search keywords. We want to capitalize on that. Let's say there's market saturation and we need to pull back from YouTube advertising and competition, or there's consumer awareness on a certain channel, a new market exploration, or a client desire, any dynamic, or a product goes out of, a product might go out of stock, and it's like, that's the product that sells well on Facebook. We can't spend. Any single dynamic that changes, or any dynamic changes that influence sales or digital marketing goals, can be accounted for through the X factor, which is, I think, one of the coolest parts of this model, because it really gives you a lot of flexibility to layer on top of this basic math that we did, looking at total addressable market, total potential US sales, category as percent of sales. And now it's like, here you could actually bring in what you know about the client. So let's zoom out. I'm going to make some edits and you'll see how the visual representations of everything changes. So you might not be able to see all the charts. So let's say here I am on my X factor. Brand Facebook, we want to spend negative 3,500, right? So you're seeing everything change in the wheels. YouTube, we want to do 0 X factor. Let's say display, we want to cut it down. We want to totally negative it out. So we might say negative 5,650, right? I don't want to spend on YouTube. And here I have, you'll see reallocated spend by channel. It's really cool, $0. And again, display goes away. Let's say for Google brand, my X factor adjustment, I want to spend an extra $4,000. And again, you go along as we go. So now if I'm spending, my base case is $97,000 annually for Google performance. I know I'm getting an increase in lift in search traffic. Maybe I want to put that up $30,000. I really want to prioritize Google performance. Okay. So what's the problem here potentially? In my total, with my negatives and my negative and positive adjustments, I now told the model I'm willing to spend another $21,850. And that's a problem, because that's not what the client told us we're allocating for, right? Remember, we're allocating for $200,000. If we go into our go into our X factor adjustment, we see $21,850 and adjusted totals, right? This is going to be a sum of my spend per channel in the base case plus my X factor adjustment. My sum is $221,000, $221,850. That's a problem, right? Because I am spending too much. And that's where we get to reallocate the spend by channel, which is really, really neat. So we have the X factor adjustment. We explained what it is. We went through doing it. Now we could reallocate spend by channel. So after adjusting for X factor, we might wind up with more total spend allocated than your marketing budget. This column adjusts this formula where you take the value, you take the R9 value, you take your total, you divide it by the sum of everything here, which is $221,850, and then you multiply it by your budget, your initial budget. That gives you the weighted reallocated spend by channel. So let's take a look here. I wanted to spend $56.50, right? Or not I wanted to spend. My initial base case output for Facebook brand was $5,650 annually. I said I have market conditions that indicate to me why that's not that I want to pull back spend from Facebook. Maybe our graphic designer is sick. Who knows? That would give me a base adjusted total of $2,150. But based on all the other things I want to do, I need to bring that down even further. So my reallocated spend by channel really is $1,938. Let's take a look on the flip side. With Google, I wanted to spend my base case scenario showed me $97,000 annually, but I wanted to increase that by $30,000. However, based on all the other things I wanted to do, all my other considerations in the X factor per channel, the mathematical well, I would then be spending $127,000, right? So 97,000 plus 30,000 is $127,000, but I can't. The mathematical output would be $115,000. So that's when this formula here is a neat trick to weigh the percentage, the appropriate actual X factor adjustment based on the boundary of my $200,000 marketing goal. All right, and you always want to make sure that this number here at the bottom of column S lines up with this number here, in cell F18. So S18, Sam 17 rather, and F Frank 18 should always line up. They should always be your total marketing budget. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so we've reallocated spend by channel, and we're seeing that in action. So listen, have fun with the X factor adjustment, or leave it alone if there's no reason to use it, right? You could have a 0 X factor adjustment straight across the board. See, that's not good. You could have 0, nothing wrong with having no X factor adjustments, okay? And then you're just gonna still spend your same $200,000 and everything works. But I want to show you what it actually looks like. Now in column T, we have our category totals, the actual totals. So we're gonna spend $18,593 in brand after our X factor, $13,403 in streaming TV, and $168,004 in performance, broken out 54 to Facebook, 113 to Google. All right, beautiful. Now let's talk about what I think is the greatest part of this model: primary target market versus secondary target markets. Okay, let's just jump back into this slide. We spoke about reallocated spend by channel. Now I abbreviate this PTM and STM. This could be PTA and STA, primary target audience or market, and secondary target market or audience. And it's a very simple concept. Many brands need to, or they're interested in, targeting 2 or more totally different audience segments that they don't overlap. For example, Uber needs to attract both drivers and riders. Riders might be considered their primary target market, and then drivers then would be considered the secondary target market, right? So there's 2 different markets. Uber needs riders and drivers for their business to work. A healthcare facility might need doctors. They might want to attract doctors, and they might want to have a campaign that attracts patients. And when I say there's no overlap, that doesn't mean a doctor can never be a patient and a patient can never be a doctor, or a rider can never be a driver, or vice versa. It means that the marketing campaigns are going to be different. The ad copy, the messaging, the landing pages, the budget, the revenue, that's going to be different. And typically, clients will have a primary target audience, and they will have secondary target audiences. A drug manufacturer, they may want to target both doctors and patients to make both doctors and patients aware of their drug. A toy manufacturer, they may want to target both parents and children. And if parents are the ones that generate the most revenue, because it's the most linear, then parents would be the primary target audience, and children might be the secondary target audience or secondary target market. Um, and often these ad campaigns, like I said, they must be tailored to that specific market. That is why this model incorporates that consideration. Now, the cool thing is that you don't have to use it. You could just keep this simple and make this a model that's just allocating 100% of our budget to our primary target market. I'm going to show you how to do that. However, if a client comes to you and says, how would I allocate this budget and still give some budget to a secondary target market campaign? Well, this model allows you to do that. And let me show you how. So PTM percentage is what percentage of all this $200,000 allocation do you want per channel going to your primary target market? And again, the great thing is we could do this 7 different times. So let's say Facebook brand, we want 50% going to the primary target market. YouTube, we want 65%. Display, we want 100% going to the primary target market. Google brand, we want 100% going to the primary target market. Streaming to me, maybe, you know what, that's really going to be our secondary market. In our case, so let's say, going back to my case that I'm imagining is the home chefs. So we need to have people who are buying food, and we need to have people on the platform that's selling food. So the sellers are my secondary target market, but I think I'm going to be most appealing to them through streaming TV. So I want only 20% to go to my primary target, which are going to be the buyers for streaming TV, or maybe even 15%. And then Facebook, let's call that 85 and 97. Okay. Again, these are beautiful. It's editable. You could do whatever you want with them. And then we're not going to actually write out the secondary target market percentage because, of course, we could just use the math. But first, we need to get a sense of the market capacity to fulfill our desired allocation. That's what we need to do here. And that's going to just take some research on your end. You're going to have to look at impressions, click-through rate, and average CPCs. So getting the maximum available spend is important because if we want to know if we could actually fulfill our desired PTM allocation, the primary target market. So if I say I want to allocate 90% of $100,000, I need to be sure that we could tell the client that based on our research, we can anticipate us actually doing that. And if we can't, that's the coolest part of this model. If we find that the allocation that we want to spend $150,000 over the course of the year on Google search in our primary target market, but we look at impressions, click-through rate, and average CPC, total clicks, and our maximum available spend is actually less, is only $70,000, the model is going to automatically give an additional $20,000 to the secondary target audience campaign. It's really cool. So that's why we need to do this. And you could really leave this out if you want, but it's worthwhile. So you look at SEMrush, you look at Google, you look at your historical Google Ads data. You look at some, research, and you put together and you say, okay, what do I think is the maximum amount of impressions? So that number here we're looking at, impressions, when I have 1.2 million, so on and so forth. This is the total maximum amount of impressions that I think we could get in a year. And again, you could be this is very much a model, and these are very much based on assumptions. Click-through rates, based on assumptions. You could incorporate as much historic data as you'd like. You should incorporate historic data. Of course, to get total clicks, we multiply our impressions by our click-through rate, and that gives us and then average CPC. You use your historic data, you use your research to get a predicted average CPC per channel. That gets your maximum available spend. Now let's take a look at here for a second. If I see all these numbers in column Z higher than all the numbers in column S, I'm going to be fine because I know that I could allocate my full PTM, right? I know I can allocate my full primary target market allocation to in the way that I'd like. However, let's just go for an example. So let's say I want to do $113,000 here for the Google performance, and I want to allocate 95% of that, let's say, okay? Now, let's just come over here and we say my max available spend. Let's say I'm only going to get, let's say I'm only going to get 50,000 impressions. Let's just give it a, let's be a little closer. 400,000. Okay. So what did I just do? Wrong place. 350,000. Okay, here's a good example. So 350,000 impressions, and again, of course, this is just an example, would give me a total maximum available spend of $79,000 for the year on Google Performance. So this formula here, this really cool formula, shows that I could only allocate 70%. I could only allocate 70% of my $113,000 to my primary target market. Okay, because 70% of $113,000 is just right here at 79,625, and it's just a really cool added layer of sophistication. So again, if we come back here, if I say there's going to be 20 million impressions. Now, if I say there's going to be 20 million impressions, it doesn't mess up the model, right? It just shows me that I have a $45 million max spend. I could actually fulfill my 95% right here, desired PTM allocation. And then finally, let's just see if I make sure I didn't miss anything in the slides. We talked about PTM and STM as actual as a percentage. Right, so this calculation determines, based on total market available spend, whether or not we can anticipate hitting our desired PTM allocation like we just explained and we just illustrated. If we can't, the model distributes that budget to STM allocation. And this is an advanced insight I've never seen a budget allocation model that I've looked at account for. And of course, now we use math to get the STM percentage. So if we're 80% in the primary target market, you're going to get 20% allocated to the secondary target market, so on and so forth. Finally, the end of the model, PTM and STM actuals. We go into the model here. We actually take a numerical value, so it's 50% of we look at the actual primary target market allocation, and it's going to be multiplied by the total amount for that channel, and then you use math to get it for the secondary target market. So in the way we've allocated it here, the total final budget allocation across all the channels gives $170,483 to the primary target market campaign, $29,517 to the secondary target market campaign. And that's reflected in these charts with purple and yellow. And of course, because we gave so much, this is a difficult chart to really see because we gave so much preference to Google performance, right? We're spending $5,000 on YouTube 100, and this might be actually how it looks. And of course, if you know how to use Excel, you could certainly take a chart and move it around and drag it lower, right, and get a better sense of this stuff. And I'll just move this lower. We'll look at that in a second, okay? Now, if I'm just looking at one campaign, then my PTM allocation here is just going to be 100%. Sorry, not 199, 100%. And if I go 100%, I'm not going to have any purple and yellow on that chart. I'm going to have all one color, as you see now, right? Everything's going to be primary target market, colored purple. But if you, let's see, have here, and again, this will still work. If I can't fulfill the primary target market spend, it'll still give me secondary target market spent. So let's say I told them I want 100%, but again, there's only available, 320,000 impressions. Look, my model just gave me $40,000 allocated to secondary target market in the yellow. It's really cool. And this goes back up to 3 million impressions. And now I'm that purple again. If I want to do 15% secondary target market across the board, then I just do 85%. And then each one of my allocations is going to have something allocated to So it will have something allocated to the secondary target market. So it's really cool stuff. Let's take a look at the visual charts we have here, and that's basically the end of the model. I know that this was a lot. It's quite a handful, I guess, to wrap your head around, but maybe listen to the recording again, make a copy of it, and go through it. So in this chart, as we just looked at, we have every single one of the individual channels broken out, and we see the total annual budget allocated, and we see how much of that budget is for primary target audience or market, and how much of that budget is for the secondary target market or audience. In this chart, we have the total budget allocation by category, so performance, TV, and brand. Remember, those are our 3 top-level categories. And if you want to get more information in a chart, you just got to pull it out a little bit. Sometimes you need to make it taller, but you could edit these charts on your own. And if you hover over, you'll see the values: 18,000, 13,000, 168,000 to performance. And here's the budget allocation by channel. Here's just similar to the bar chart, but just in a pie chart format, and not breaking it out by secondary or primary, just the total. So Google performance, Facebook, streaming TV, Google brand, YouTube, Facebook brand. And then down here, we have total budget allocation by target audience. So out of everything, we have 85% going to the primary target market and 15% going to the secondary target market overall. And of course, you could continue to make your own charts as you go along. But overall, this is a fantastically powerful budget allocation model. We use this. We use this exact same model and presented it to one of the global top 10 pharma companies. They're actually one of the companies that are definitely in the race to develop a COVID vaccine. And we built them a budget allocation model for 7 of their drugs across 3 different therapeutic areas. And of course, this was changed around to be for any traditional marketing campaign, digital advertising campaign. And I spent, I don't know, a good 3-4 hours on this model, making it usable for all of you guys, but it's the same basic bones. And I've gone on to use these models I've gone on to use this model for other clients and other pitches. So just lastly, the way to access it is to make a copy, because of course I'm going to give this to you as a view only. So you go to File, when you open it up, go to File, make a copy, and then you'll have a version of this in your own Google Drive, and you can play around with it. Now, just a couple things I'd like to ask of you. Please do not share or distribute. This will harm my personal income and livelihood, right? If you share this and you make multiple copies and you give it out to other people, you're hurting me. So please don't do that. I can't customize the model for anyone, unfortunately. Not every use case is going to be the same. You might have to massage it a little bit, but I can't do work on anybody's individual template or model. I hope you understand. It would be very time consuming, and there's quite a lot here that you could use just out of the box. Again, please make a single copy for yourself. Don't make multiple copies. And lastly, use it well. Use it to generate business. Use it to show your clients the way you think about budget allocation. And again, whether you're a client or you're working in-house at a company, or you're just in general a marketer wanting to understand how a sophisticated agency would go about budget allocation, how clients expect it. And lastly, even if you're dealing with small clients that are spending $5,000 a month, still use this, okay? Go above and beyond. The only reason why our agency has the opportunities that we have is because even when we were dealing with very, very small, we still deal with very small projects all the time. The majority of our projects are tiny little small projects. But when they are, we take them just as seriously and with the same amount of passion and care as we take our larger deals. So that's what I want to leave you with. Even if this seems so much more advanced or more than what a client is asking for, show them what you're capable of. Show them that you really care about their business. Go above and beyond what they're paying you for, and that will open up new doors and new opportunities. I hope you guys enjoy it. Use it well. I look very much forward to hearing your feedback on how this model has helped you and what you think about it. So be well. I'll see you guys all in the very next lecture.